Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known. Volume 2, Rise of the First World Teacher, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.
Good morning, this is Dr. James Weldon, or Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina, which is the location of our International Center and community supporting the experience and development of higher states of consciousness and living a life in harmony with nature. This is my second book, The Rise of the First World Teacher. The first one, Living the Enlightened Life. Parameters around what the experiences might be in higher states of consciousness as they grew, sharing what I passed through. And I posed a question: when the saints leave us, where do they go? And really, of course, there's another question: when we leave, where do we go? The poem at the beginning of this chapter, I'm not going to go through that completely because it was meant to be a culmination of the story. There is no culmination. The insights, the understanding, the perception of the greater life continues to expand. In the Yoga Sutras some time ago, Patanjali, in a commentary that was being done, even after these higher states of consciousness are experienced and apparently lived, it says the knowledge and wisdom continues to expand until, hard to understand these words, everything that can be known is known. So considering that this whole world that we're living in is a speck in space flying through, I think there's a lot more stories to be told. And the little poem I told as a part of that description was, I was answering myself, I don't know. I said, now I see the beautiful I don't know. So there is a I don't know out of ignorance, and there's another I don't know out of wisdom. The beautiful I don't know recognizes that the reality that we're living in is fathomless, and the truth of ourselves and our lives and our connections to all of that is also fabulous. One of the things that I was trying to explain is I was talking to the group this last day about the consciousness of the world, which we call Gaia, which is the same thing as the cosmic state that I really tried to explain in my first book, The Cosmic State of Consciousness. Is this world as a whole being, living being, Gaia, the mother that we live on, and that everything is alive. And as one grows in one's understanding, one feels that connection and can't help but cherish the world. So we do need to take care of this world. We do need to love this world. And I'm telling you, I know of no group and organization in the world, honestly, that is doing more in that area, that's taking responsibility for the world, than this wonderful organization called the Art of Living Foundation and the International Association of Human Values and the Prison Smart and the programs for teens and the programs for adults and kids and prisoners, and it goes on and on and on and on. I can't even keep up with it anymore. There's always room for more and more and more. So we came back from the World Cultural Festival in 2006. I was entering another phase in my life, and there were two things that I was working on in this next phase. To try to fulfill the dream and insight of creating a community, supporting a community, being part of a community that was directed towards bridging the gaps in our understanding between the cultures and traditions. It was actually a project that the founder of the Art of Living put me on a long time ago that I didn't fulfill. Back when I had my one of my first travels into India, and we taught in the northeastern part of India, an amazing time. We were able to teach huge numbers of people up in that region, and instigate a peace process or be part of a peace process and support many new teachers that may have been coming in. He told me on one of the trips, I want you to go and start teaching and speaking to some of the Christian ministers and throughout the area. And I did that a little bit in India, but I never fulfilled that. He asked me, and I felt an obligation to do that. And a number of years have passed now, and you may hear about what's going to happen in the third book. That's going to talk about a lot of that, about bridging that. People are able to conceive this. Returning from India, settled down in a house, living in Longmont, Colorado. Part of this next phase of my life was involved with service. We'd stepped back a little bit from our ongoing activity. We didn't have to support and maintain the centers in that area, the Boulder, Denver area. There are other teachers that were moving into that. As sometimes happened when I came back from some of these trips, I had to kind of recreate some of the financial basis. Well, I ended up having a position that was working with seniors in their homes. They were getting a little bit older, and they were really concerned about having to end up in long-term care facilities. And they didn't want to move into those places. And that was another goal, perhaps deeper, that perhaps we could create a place for them where we could create a community, so as we all grow a little bit older, can be supported in that lifestyle. During this time in my life, I was traveling around, working with seniors, trying to make their homes safer. Some of these seniors were falling, they were breaking their hips, doing day-to-day things. It was a really kind of easy position for me because I was given a list of individuals I needed to go talk to. The appointments were all made, and I'd go out and have a conversation with them and suggest, how some things they could do, and they could agree or not agree, and many of them did. And that was a very easy lifestyle and for me, and a way to support myself during that time. But at the same time, I was still dreaming and thinking about the center, the community. The community that I was thinking about was where I'm living now, actually Heavenly Mountain. I had no idea that this place existed. And I spent a lot of time and energy envisioning how that could be done, really setting very strongly my son called my spiritual intent that would happen. I had been put on this project a long time ago by the Maharishi Yogadhi back in 1976. So now it was 2006, it's been 30 years. He recognized apparently that this ability of the consciousness, it's one of the capabilities of consciousness. The words have the ability to make themselves fruitful. I was in a very small group there in 1976 called the Established Rhythm Group. We didn't know really what that was. I'd known that I had had that experience, and I known that that being that I experienced had said those words. I was at least in the right place. Told to envision this world center for the West and perhaps centers all over the world. That eventually happened, of course. This is where I'm living right now. So before all of this happened, there's a lot of things that happened. So I decided, by golly, I was going to do it. And then Trisha also put me on that project. When I started telling him about some of my dreams of creating such a community, I was convinced it was going to be in the mountains. As it turns out, Heavenly Mountain, it was a different set of mountains. I picked the wrong mountain plan. And so I did this whole program on a facility up there, actually in Estes Park, Colorado. And it was owned at one time by an individual in the Transcendental Meditation Organization. And it wasn't very active. There wasn't much going on. It seemed to be an attractive opportunity. It seemed a very big place to me. It had about 80 rooms and 8 or 10 houses and a meeting hall and all of that. And now I know it was too small, way too small. I did a whole plan, and the Art of Living didn't have the means. What actually happened is at one point we brought out a map of the United States, and we laid it on the table in front of him, kind of corralled him. And he was on his couch, but we kind of corralled him. And he said, just put your finger down. Just put your finger down. Wherever you want us to go, we'll go and we'll do it. We'll just do it. And that organization at this time did not have the huge means to do this. He looked at me and he says, "Oh, Yogadhi, don't worry, someday you'll do it." And for me, that was it. But I didn't hear everything that he said. I didn't hear, "Don't worry about it." I heard, "Just someday you will do it." And by God, that was it. That was it. For me, there was now no question. There was no question. So the worrying I had. I fretted over this. I worried over this. I planned over this in a lot of ways, making this happen. He said, "Don't worry about it." But I did. Brought all the skills I had together, developing a community in the past, and all my friends, many of my friends in Boulder, and some of them were potential investors. And I did a whole detailed plan. So while I was traveling around working with these seniors, helping them out in their homes and keeping them safe and really earning actually a pretty easy living. And my dream was still on this. Even though we'd left Estes Park, this hope was still that would happen. That continued till 2012, 6 years. I worked on that and planned on that and fretted on this. And I just, there are many different moving pieces, and we need to do a holistic clinic, a wellness clinic. We need to do a restaurant. Everything that we have here on Heavenly Mountain, I was thinking about doing. How to bring the business in, how to operate it, all of that stuff. And I had this big plan, and I would take the plan to some of the advanced programs, and I catch Sri and I'd lay it out, and he'd go, "Oh." He'd say, "Okay, continue to look at it." He wouldn't dissuade me. It was done in love, and so he supported that love. I continued working on that. And again, the insights continued to come. And time is interesting. Time is a very interesting phenomenon. And I began to wonder if time was the same for everyone. And I realized it certainly was not. I can remember back when I was a young child playing in Cocoa Beach, Florida. One day was like eternity. So many things could happen in one single day. Playing with the dog and going to the beach and riding my bicycle, and some of those sweet days when I was with my father before he passed away, playing chess with him and ambling around and climbing the trees. So much. Time is different from a point of view of physics as well. If you were traveling 99% of the speed of light, and somebody else out here on a planet somewhere was not traveling 99% of the speed of the light, a day in your spaceship would be a year for them. And I begin to realize and see this. It's very deep and profound truth, which I thought about for many, many years. I had heard Sri talk about time at one point, but I started thinking about time on different levels of life, that it may not be the same. And one of the things that he said at that time, open up the door of the different levels of life, the different planes of creation. Apparently, I'm sharing some of that in the works that I'm doing. But he once said on the heavenly places, one day there could be a year here. One day, single day, could be a year here. I started thinking about my loved ones and some of my dear friends who had passed. And I began to realize that whole life here, from that point of view, could be 60 days, maybe a little bit more, or really a short period of time. And Maharishi had passed away 1 year to the day from when he passed away. Sri gave me a glimpse of this reality. And the purpose of sharing this is to help you understand that we need to be a little bit more easy about time and space and getting things done. So 1 year to the day, I came out of a deep sleep. Again, I've been talking about these 7 states of consciousness. This state of transcendental consciousness between waking, dreaming, sleeping, satori state, that insight can come. I was in one of these experiences, and I looked up, not in the body. This is this is a higher plane of reality experience. I came into this experience and we were in a place, obviously on a subtle level, and Sri Sri looked at me, I looked at him, and I turned to my left, and there was Maharishi. There was Maharishi. He took me to see him, to have what we call a darshan. Darshan is an interesting word, to be in the presence, to come into the space of, to be in the consciousness of. I saw him, I looked, Sri Sri didn't say anything. He just looked up and I saw him. I said, okay, now I realize I'm in this place. And then I turned and then I saw Maharishi sitting and I said, oh my God. And I hit the floor. Boom. I hit the floor. You know, I went down. Pranam. I went down because I was so absolutely surprised. But this was 1 year to the day when he passed. So I think that this was perhaps for him the day after. I don't know. In that high place. In other words, time is not the same. So 1 year had passed for me. Very, very interesting. All I can say is I cannot imagine seeing somebody that appeared more established in the inner being. It was beyond anything that my mind could hold on to and comprehend. It's very deep, very, very profound. And if you've been in India and you've had a chance to travel around and see some of these, what they call the murtis of some of the saints. His body was like, it was made of mercury, like the silver mercury. His form was like, that was the consistency. It was silver, it wasn't like this. You know, I just, oh my God, I didn't even say, I just said, oh my God, and I pranam, I went down, boom, I hit the floor. It was like, there was no choice. I was so absolutely flabbergasted by this. But the presence, the love was beyond anything that I was able to appreciate. He's just there in that space, you know, looking at me momentarily. And there were other beings there, and they did appear to have bodies and everything like us, but not of that form. So it was just totally unbelievable. And I honestly, my dear friends, this was true. This really, really happened. There's a huge mystery in all of this. So I came out of that, just a short period of time that this happened. It may have been the entire night, as far as in my body on the earth, you see, because if one day there is 365 days here, that could have been a few moments I was there, and the whole night could have passed for me. Time is not the same. Time is not the same. You know, I came out of this experience as I usually do. I immediately come into consciousness. What was that all about? So there are 7 levels of this creation, 7 levels of our existence. Our body, our breath, our mind, our intellect, our ego, and our self. And these are principles that are taught and explained as part of this fabulous program called the Healing Breath, or the Happiness Program. It's been configured, Art of Living course, taught by 100,000 or more teachers all over the world. If you get a chance to do that, you should do it. You really should do it. It's really great because it actually starts you through the process. And so the second level of our existence is the life force, or the prana. The techniques that are taught and the knowledge that is taught in that program is really very profound. And so what Sri Sri did is he collected all of the great pieces of nuggets of wisdom that everybody should know, and he put that in a 2 or 3 day program. And then he brought some techniques on how to do the prana, charge that. It's called pranayama, means to charge the body with this life force. So we're living in an ocean of energy and life and vitality, and we're looking for energy. Oh, we're tired. Oh, we're bothered about this. All these qualities and these negative qualities that we go through are related to the lower energy. When the energy is lower, then things bother you, then you feel depressed. You start worrying, small things are sticking to your mind. The technology and methodology is designed to take you out of that in a very powerful way. And when you look at this activity of this, so many of these people around the world that are involved, every single one of them will tell you about the transformation they've been through. This world is full of high consciousness right now. It's a very important time in the world. There's huge breakthroughs that are taking place everywhere. There's so much good work that's being done it's not on the major networks, but there's really, really great things that are going on. And this wonderful community which we're creating here is one of them. Learning how to inherently recharge the body with life force, it's like learning how to plug in the battery. Your cell phone runs down, you recharge it. And it gets all refreshed, otherwise it dies. In the same way, there are huge differences between individuals in terms of the capability to hold this life force in the body. And as this life force begins to become higher, then the energy and the emotions begin to become higher. And then many of the subtle aspects of our physiology, which have been talked about, we can begin to experience. So all this about the energy centers and the love coming out and the healing and all of this stuff that has become esoteric fodder in a sense, then becomes like an experience. So I challenge every single one of you to make this an experience in your life. And if you do so, it will enrich your life. So these 7 levels of creation exist because of what I've been through in different experiences. I'm trying to gauge and understand what happens afterwards when we leave. And Sri Sri never talks about this much. When someone asks him, he always says, well, you'll find out when you get there. I want to know now. You know what? I would like to know now. So you can take whatever I'm sharing with you, however you want to take it. Accept it, don't accept it. But this is definitely my experience. One of the things that happened in the early phase, way back in 1976, if you had a chance to read those chapters in the book, Living the Enlightened Life. So I was in Switzerland at the time that Swami Muktananda was there, and Guru Maharaj Vilasananda was. When I was 26 years old, I was living on the hotel overlooking the mountains in Salzburg, Switzerland. And, I had a transformative experience. What I said about what I saw, I was feeling all this devotion and love, and then all of a sudden there was a transformation, and I was actually cast up, if you will, into this next level of life. And so the earth holds us back, right? You're somewhere, those of you that are listening, you're where you are. It takes a lot of work to get where I am at. I have to get on a plane and maybe fly around the world somewhere, et cetera, et cetera. But things are different in the next level of life. What happened in that experience is that I was cast up out of the body into this next level of the prana force, but the walls weren't solid. They were like transparent glass, and I was able to move down to the next room, which I saw a young man sitting there on a couch. If you have a chance to read what I said, I saw a young man with long hair. Now I know that this was Sri Sri Ravishankar. I didn't know at the time. He got up and started dancing with me, and I'm telling you, I said, oh my God, it must be Krishna. Make up your own mind. Krishna also develops in us. Jesus dwells within us. that divine existence is part of us, but we really need to become clear so that we can begin to experience that. You know, I grew up in the space industry. My father was one of the founders of the space industry, the military. And actually everywhere that I go, often I actually wear a hat which says Cape Canaveral NASA on it. My father was a founder in that. I always wanted to do space travel. If he hadn't passed away when I was young and I wasn't going through all these challenges in terms of flashbacks in the past and these different kind of out-of-body experiences, some of them that I was having as a child that were perplexing me so much, I might have entered into that. Might have entered into that organization, maybe been one of those guys that ended up, doing some of the early trips outwards. But I can tell you for sure, I don't believe that it ultimately is going to be like Star Trek. I suspect that we are going to have to evolve to the state where we have the ability to move and dwell in this next higher level, the prana of the life force. Then we can go where we want to go. Then we can go where we want to go. And so I think this is actually the answer to that. We're not going to be put in a tin box with lots of oxygen and head out, for 500 years to fly to a star. We're going to have the ability to have access to all of this. This is the next section of our evolution when we evolve and we begin to implement the aspects of consciousness in travel. I didn't realize that I ended up being really an astronaut on the shuttle. There is a part of my life, a story back in the first book, where I spent almost a year doing that and writing what I passed through and the experiences. But at the end of that, it was difficult to prove if it was true or not. And also it was difficult to verify. Also, was it really practical? And would anybody believe it? Would anybody believe it? And so after I did all of that, it's maybe possible I have those words somewhere someday. Maybe someone in the archives will go into my old hard drives and find them there. After I did all of that and wrote it all out, I carried it around for a few years. I threw it all away. It was about 2 inches thick. What happens on subtle levels? I begin to be a little circumspect about it. Because what happens is that there is a power that one gains as one grows, that anything you bring into consciousness, you can begin to experience. Whether it's completely clear and true, that's another story. I would say in many cases it's not. It wasn't until some years ago that Shishi finally said, okay, now it's becoming clear. He said, okay, now you can trust that insight. Go ahead. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. The ongoing saga, episode 20. I'm quite surprised now I'm getting friends that are texting me and emailing me. They're doing binge listening. I've not made a big deal about it. I put it out. I posted to some of my friends, and I consider this as kind of a historical perspective. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Have a great day. Go out and wonder about your life. Wonder about the time of your life. Think about it for a moment. Look back over your life and everything you've been through in the last 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. Boom, it can condense down into a very small period of time. And of course, if we happen to be sitting in our spaceship right next to a black hole, the time there would pass slow, and consciousness is that black hole. If you don't have matter, if you're beyond matter, black holes are no problem. Things to wonder about. This is a fun time. I get to share some. Let's go out and do some good. Have a fun day. Give everybody a hug. Smile at everybody. Realizing that life is just a play. Enjoy it. Don't take it so serious. Take the time to explore your inner being. Of course, I appreciate and suggest what I've learned in the path that I've been through is very powerful. And you can take to that, but there are other sources for knowledge and wisdom in life. Thank you. Namaste, and may the divine awaken in you. Check it out.